This is a music review of the first album by Procul Harum. Sometimes it's referred to as Procul Harum. The US version actually titled it A Wider Shade of Pale. But a little background, their origins. They started off as a band called the Paramounts, based in Essex, led by Gary Brooker and Robin Trower and B.J. Wilson. And they had a moderate hit with the Lieber and Stoller song Poison Ivy. That was at the beginning, the back end of 64, early 65. But they disbanded in 66. And then we leap forward a year to April 67, when Brooker again began working with Keith Reid, who was a poet, and the Hammond organ player Matthew Fisher, guitarist Ray Royer, and bassist David Knight. And this was the crux of the band that, produced by Gus Judgin, was involved in the creation of the song A Wider Shade of Pale, recorded in 1967 by Denny Cordell. And this then led to a rethink as to how we were going to move forward. With regard to A Wider Shade of Pale, it was a song structured reminiscent of Baroque music and a counter melody based on Johann Sebastian Bach's Orchestral Suite No. 3 in D major. And Fisher played this on his Hammond organ, and Brooker's vocals and Reid's lyrics created this sound that was universally accepted as one of the greatest pop songs of all time. However, after that hit, the band, in attempting to consolidate this studio success, began touring, and they soon encountered some problems. And so Brooker then re-recruited B.J. Wilson on drums and Robin Trower on guitar from his old Paramount days, and that was the core of the band as they went out on tour. And this first album followed towards the back end of 1967. So let's have a quick look at the track by track for the first Procul Harum album, and the British version I'm going to look at today, not the American version. The opener then is Conquistador. Well, what a great intro this is. The piano pulses as the solid rhythm enables Gary's passionate vocal to whip up a rhythm, and the solid guitar, bass and drums, which drives a powerful rock sound that enables the pacey organ solo to power the song to the finish. It's a great opener, as I said, and indicative of confidence and power. Lyrically, Reid was probably mocking heroism and vanity, as exemplified by the 16th century Spanish conquerors who arrived in the America and were named conquistadors. Their early new face of victory was soon replaced, however, by ageism and death, disappointment and significantly disrepute by the locals. So that's Conquistador. Track 2 then, She Wandered Through the Garden Fence. Complete contrast to track 1. It's a song full of humour, and it bounces along. The pop beat links into a lovely organ section that hints a little bit of Baroque. Gary's vocals are very McCartney-like. Again, the organ takes the solo. It, for me, created an English country garden feel, and the jaunty style is very music hall like for me. Lyrically, well, I thought it was a dream with devious intent. that is curbed by a girl who is more than the equal to the dreamer. A desire for love on your own terms is quashed. And others, though, on the internet suggested that it was a drug-induced lyric with connotations that at the time everything was labelled with in the 67 era, LSD, etc. The phrase, the potion bringing relief. Well, I didn't see that in a young adolescent, I must admit. It was more experimentation than relief. So that's my take on She Wandered Through the Garden Fence. Up next was Something Followed Me, and it's a much slower paced song. The keyboards and piano drive it, with Gary's addictive vocal again. The blues sort of rhythm takes us towards the solo, which is a classy piano roll which leads to Trower's very brief solo. Psychedelic in style, though. It smoulders a bit. And lyrically, it's a dark tale of seeing your own tombstone, referring to various health incidents, pain, deadly events, maybe a future perception of one's demise. I'm not too sure. On to track 4 then, Mabel. This is a really kooky sort of track. Another taste of music hall, possibly the fun fair, with its oompa brass section. It's a cacophony of noise, very sort of Sergeant Pepperish, really, and the jazz sound is very over the top, almost drunken revelry, and lyrically, well, it seems to be a mix of being drunk, lustful, hungry and uninhibited, with reference to poor Mabel in the kitchen. Maybe it's a party atmosphere or a special event or something like that. So that's Mabel. And then to track 5, Cerdes, Outside the Gates of. Wow, this is a real epic, this closer to side 1. There's a sort of majestic side to it, and it stabs with a dramatic piano and guitar, and the solo, albeit brief, is very powerful. Gary then lays out with an impassioned vocal, and then Trower, the first time he really opened his shoulders on the album, really, and it's almost a liquid guitar-like lick that dominates the track, and his ability shines through. It's not Hendrix, certainly, but it's pretty impressive, very rock-like, and the twin throngs of the piano and keyboards. It's got a slight nod, really, to Stevie Winwood's Traffic in it, I think, and it's a very explosive end to side 1. Now, lyrically, well, where do you begin, really? Well, Cerdes is Reed reflected that Cerdes was a mythical animal figure, playing a flugelhorn like a trumpeting unicorn. So if that isn't induced by some substance, I don't know what is. The track then refers to mermaids and carnations making a reef for ailing whales. Well, very strange. And then it references Neptune, the Roman god of the sea, dancing with hornpipes, and Salome sheds her veil. Phallus Phil peddles pewter pops. Well, who's Phallus Phil? Anybody's guess. So really, it would be easy to evaluate this as a drug-induced LSD lyric extravaganza, really. And I can't really suggest any alternative, but the music is impressive. So that brings us to the end of side one on the vinyl. So to kick off the second side of Procul Harum's debut album, track 6, I'll call it, it's a Christmas Camel. The music, well, I saw another critic say that this song was a rip-off of a Ray Charles riff. I can't really comment on that, but it certainly starts off with a punchy piano intro, which sets up Gary's impassioned vocals. Fisher on organ is very compact, and he mixes with the piano a bit like Kid Brothers, and then Trower's lead swells the sound. His heavy, strident style is definitely progressive in the truest sense of the word. As for lyrics, the exodus of the rich and famous to wealthy tax-free havens caught my eye, but an alternative is that it's a reckless choice of partner, a reckless choice of personal business, and then a need to escape. Make of that what you wish. Next track is Kaleidoscope, a standard organ really driven rock song, definitely a weak part of the album, although the laid back Trower solo midway through saves it towards the end. Lyrically it's an amalgam, I think, of physical sensations in a lonely world, possibly drug induced, coupled with visual imageries that are impacted on your personal psyche. Next up is Salad Days, brackets are here again. Musically this slows things down appreciably, but Fisher dominates again early on, and then Brooker's court jester style piano comes in, and the midsection has a standard sort of organ solo really. Again, not too much happening here, but the music reflects a sadness in the lyric. As the lyrics are a tale of disappearing love maybe, or disappearing life. The contrast of night and day. The title, well, I thought boredom, tastelessness, but apparently Shakespeare used this phrase to describe youthful time and innocence. On to Good Captain Clack. This has a music hall pace about it, and epitomises a sailor's tavern where the grog is the order of the day, and sailors sing along, and it's jaunty and a little gem really. Lyrically, a fictional figure aging and losing the desire for work and replacing it with booze and tobacco, whilst this compares with the self-discipline and self-worth with regard to work. Just my take on it. You can take with it what you wish. The last official track on the British version is Repent While Purchased, which is an instrumental, and it's an absolute dream of a finale. Fisher's organ emerges to create a solemn mood, Baroque style, and then Trower's liquid guitar creeps into the mix and takes over. There's a great melody, it has a classic rock fusion, and that makes ways to a classic piano. Beauty personified, I thought, and then we rejoin the pomp and musical explosion of organ, piano and guitar as they collide as a collage of rock's finest for 1967. A word about the US version then, of course, the bonus track, A Wider Shade of Pale. Well, it's such a majestic song, timeless almost, and tumultuous. Most agree lyrically, though, that it's a pretty simple sort of message. It's about a drunken binge and leading to a sexual act, all very lustful, and although others have suggested links to Chaucer's A Miller's Tale and other sort of rather confusing interpretations, that is generally the agreed understanding of the lyric written by Reed. The music, as I say, I first heard this when I was just a little 13-year-old, and I heard it from a distance on a record player, and it just was so moving, so powerful, and it's remained with me since then. It's one of the greatest pieces of popular music of all time, and how it got captured as a single is amazing, really, but an absolute blessing that so many people bought the single and jettisoned Procul Harum to the front of a busy queue of bands who were trying to get your attention. So in conclusion, this album is an essential listen for those who were growing up as teenagers in the late 60s. It's a fine piece of work. It's easy to be a little bit critical, suggesting that it might be a little dated. I didn't find it that dated at all. I just found the splendour of it amazing to listen to repeatedly. So please get to listen to it. It's the debut album by Procul Harum. It's called Procul Harum. There is the US version, which is called A Wider Shade of Pale, but the track A Wider Shade of Pale is not on the English version. So please get to listen to it. It's a wonderful piece of work.